All right, Kelly, it looks like we have pretty much everyone joining the call. So if you want to go ahead and get us started, we are ready to go.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you so much, Nicole. My name is Kelly Douglas. I'm President and CEO at Voices for Children, and welcome to our reunion Real Word Speakers panel. We have almost 600 people registered for this event from across the country, so we're so glad that you could join us. So first, a couple of housekeeping items. We are in webinar mode, and so what that means is that you won't be able to activate your microphones or your videos, and that also means then that you get to just sit back and enjoy. This program is being recorded. A link to the recording will be shared afterwards, so in case you want to pass it along to your friends or others who might be interested, or if we have technical issues tonight, you'll have that recording for you later. We have 3 key goals for this evening. The first is we hope that you will be inspired by the young men and women who are joining us. Second, we hope you will learn more about the experience of living in foster care and how we as a community can support our most vulnerable children. And finally, we hope that you will see the impact of a consistent, caring, and reliable relationship in the lives of children in foster care. I want to first share a little bit about our mission at Voices for Children, and then I'll tell you about the Real Word panel and what brought us here today. So at Voices for Children, our mission is to transform the lives of abused and neglected children in San Diego and Riverside counties by providing a volunteer court-appointed special advocate, a CASA, to every child in foster care who needs one. The CASA is matched with a youth in foster care when they enter the system. The CASA regularly spends time with the child and gets to know them and their likes and their dislikes. The CASA also spends time speaking with and interacting with caregivers, biological parents, teachers, social workers, healthcare providers, therapists, all for the purpose of determining what the needs are of the child. The CASA then takes all that information and uses it to advocate for the child in court, in schools, and in the community to ensure that their needs are met throughout their time in foster care. For many children in foster care, their CASA is the most consistent adult presence in their lives. And for children who have experienced trauma, that reliable adult relationship often can be the strongest predictor of their ability to overcome their challenges and to be resilient in the face of hardship. About 20 years ago, Voices for Children started a speakers panel that's called The Real Word. That panel continues to thrive today, and it's comprised of foster youth who share their experiences of what it was like to go through foster care, and they also talk about the impact of their CASAs. The panel not only provides an opportunity for youth to develop speaking and other life skills, but it also provides camaraderie, support, and togetherness for the panelists. This year, Voices for Children is celebrating our 40th year of providing services in San Diego. And as part of our anniversary celebration tonight, we are thrilled to welcome back several of our early Real Word panel members, Christine Alford, Swamires Pereno-Guzman, Joseph Hill, and Candace Recco. They are joining us from all around the country. Christine is in Denver, Joseph's in San Diego, Candace is in Hawaii, and Swamires is in Oregon. Swamires is actually joining us from the hospital where he is recovering from surgery, but he is so loyal and committed to his CASA and Voices for Children that he didn't want to miss out on this event. So each of our panelists spent a number of years in San Diego's foster care system. Each of them had CASAs. Each of them has overcome incredible trauma and hardship, and they're now stable, independent, and truly have inspiring stories to share. So I'm really honored today to have with us our special guest moderator, Carlos Watson. Carlos is an entrepreneur and an award-winning journalist who is based in Silicon Valley. He founded OZY Media, and he's the host of some of OZY's Emmy-winning primetime TV shows, including, among others, Black Women Own the Conversation with Oprah Winfrey, Defining Moments on Hulu, and The Carlos Watson Show. Carlos also has anchored shows on CNN and MSNBC, and he's hosted a series of Emmy-winning interview specials, and he's one of the youngest members on the board of National Public Radio. Carlos has had a lifelong commitment to education. He grew up in Miami, Florida, and is the son and grandson of teachers. He then went on to graduate with honors from Harvard University and Stanford Law School. And as a business person, Carlos built Achieva College Prep Services into one of the nation's largest college prep companies before it was sold. He's also worked as the global head of education investment banking at Goldman Sachs and a consultant at McKinsey and Company. Clearly, Carlos's achievements are unparalleled. But what really makes him special is his authenticity, his down-to-earth, caring, and thoughtful style that allows people to share their stories when he's speaking with them, his passion for issues around us that really matter, and his can-do, optimistic spirit. So Carlos, we're super grateful that you've chosen to share your time with us tonight amidst a lot of other things going on in the world. Thank you, and I'll turn it on over to you to get us going. Thank you, Carlos.
Kelly, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's part of the Voices for Children family for all that you do. I'm really excited to be here today and be in conversation with four terrific people who have their own stories to share. And so without further ado, I want to turn and begin the conversation with each one of you. Joseph, maybe I'll start with you and ask if you could share with us, maybe briefly, how you came to be in the foster care system. And I realize that that's a story that could easily be a longer story, but I would love even kind of your short version of how you ended up in the foster care system.
Sure. Carlos, nice to meet you, first and foremost.
Same. Yes.
I started, was 3 years old. My mother basically was unable to take care of me. Some altercations in the family took place, and I was removed from custody. And that's the short version of it, basically.
And Joseph, how old were you when you first realized that you were in foster care? Did you realize that that transition had happened at 3, or was it further down the road? Or how old were you when you first had a sense of where you were and what was going on?
So there were 2 different times. The first time I was 3 years old, I was taken in to custody, and then another time later on down the line, maybe a few years later, I think maybe 5 years old, I was back in the system, and I became aware of it maybe around the age of 7 or 8 when I had to explain, why I wasn't showing up to school with my parents and why I had to have a social worker with me and things like that. And I kind of started to question my life a little bit and what I thought was normal.
And just when people now ask you, you're a father, I understand, is that right? You've got a wonderful little one.
Yes, sir.
When people ask you now, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
When people ask you now about your experience in foster care and how you think about it, not just how you entered, but how you look back on that. Again, I'm sure that that's something that could be a longer conversation, but what's the short version that you give them? What do you say for people who've never been in foster care themselves or may not know someone well who's been through the foster care system? How do you look back on your experience?
My experience, obviously when I was in foster care, I look at it differently than I do now. Now, I look at it as something that shaped me into a great person. There are some lessons that I don't think I would have learned any other way. I've definitely made some connections in foster care that I don't think I would have made any other way. So I try to look at the bright side of it. Everything is what you make of it. And, I took that and I made a positive situation of it.
And where you're based where today, Joseph? Where do you live today?
Currently in San Diego, California.
Okay.
Yes,
Candace, can I ask you to share with us next? And again, very nice to meet you, and welcome to this panel. Candace, where are you based right now?
I'm in Oahu.
That sounds like a beautiful place.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Yeah. Candace, again, maybe some of the same questions just as we get to know you a little bit to start off. How did you end up in foster care? And again, I know it could be a much longer story, but I would love to hear even the abbreviated version of how you ended up in foster care.
So I guess it started from when we were little. My parents were very abusive towards each other, emotionally and physically. And it kind of just piled up a case for us. And eventually, when I was at the age of 11, my parents decided that they no longer could take care of us. So they gave up custody of us at that time. And so my 4 brothers and I all went into the foster care system, and we all were separated. And it was just because my parents didn't know how to be parents, and they couldn't handle their own emotions, nor could they take care of 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl. And so that led us to remaining the rest of our time as a child in foster care.
And when you ended up in foster care at 11, were you scared? Were you relieved? Did you not know? Did you think, I'm just here for a minute, and it turned out to be for until you were emancipated at 18? Or what were your, do you remember how you felt at that time?
Actually, my youngest brother and I were supposed to learn how to surf that day, and all of a sudden we saw police in front of our house, and we were just like, oh, what now? Because we were so used to the cops being at our house. They knew us by our first names. So it was normal for us to see them there, so we didn't know what was going on. And when they told us we were leaving with them, I broke down because I just couldn't believe that my mom would ever let that happen to me. And I was more just started to become a mother to my youngest brother just because I wanted to protect him. I didn't know what was going to happen to him if we were going to be separated in any way. So for us, I was terrified. I didn't know what to expect. I remember going to our first group home and my brother and I sitting outside with our bags saying, our mom's coming to get us at any minute. Like, we don't need to go inside that group home because my mom's coming. And to only realize that that was never going to happen, but that was always a fantasy of mine that I kept. I think just to keep my head above water and to be like there for my youngest brother. I think that's when I realized, I guess it didn't until I was 18 and emancipated that I realized that I was never going home.
And what number were you among the 5 children? Were you the eldest? Were you the next to youngest? Where were you?
I was right in the middle.
Okay. And what was that like? I'm the brother of 3 sisters, so I have no brothers. So you and I are a little bit of kind of reverse situations. What was that like for you to be the only girl with 4 boys?
Well, I think it kind of taught me to have tougher skin. And especially in the environment that we were in. But at the same time, I felt that it was my place because my mom was never motherly to us, for me to kind of step up like into that position a lot sooner than I would have liked to be there for all of my siblings.
And Christine, can I bring you in? First of all, hello, and very nice to meet you.
Hi, Carlos. How are you?
Good. Christine, where are you today?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, I've been to Colorado. You guys have good barbecue over there.
We do, and green chili.
And green chili, yes, good point, good point. Christine, same question if you don't mind me asking you, and I realize that I'm asking about this in a direct way, but I realize that this is your life, and so know that I take it seriously, and I appreciate that you're being open, as is everybody else, with what I'm sure are sometimes painful things. Where did you grow up, and how did you end up in foster care?
Sure. So I grew up in San Diego, California. My story started off with trauma. I'm born addicted to methamphetamines. I'm not supposed to make it to my first year of birthday. So I had many different challenges and many different dysfunction and different kinds of abuses while I was growing up. At the age of 12, I actually left the home and kind of couch surfed, and I was with friends, those that I felt I could trust. I was looking for a place where I belonged and a place where I felt safe. I quickly realized at the age of 14 that that wasn't the safe place for me. So funny that we are here advocating and speaking on behalf of our stories, because that's exactly what I did at 14. I advocated for myself, and I called the Polinsky receiving home at that time and told them that I felt like my life was in danger and that I didn't have any safe place for me to go. So I actually arrived at the Polinsky Center at the age of 14 and did not return home.
And at that point, Christine, again, if you can remember and if you feel comfortable sharing, were you relieved to be there? Were you scared? Were you, at least this is not where I was? Where was your mind? Where was your heart? Where was your spirit at that point?
I think it's a little bit of everything. You know, you're in an unfamiliar place with tons of new faces, people that, you know, are in position to take care of you, but also taking care of hundreds of other children in a place. So it was all of those feelings at once. But I think I think that feeling wasn't new to me. I always felt in a place of discomfort, in a place of displacement, and never felt welcome. So those feelings to me weren't new. And it was actually relieving and comforting to know that I was around other children that felt the same. So I wasn't alone in those feelings.
And Christine, if you don't mind me asking, how did you persist? Because it is, I can imagine being 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even if you don't understand everything that's going on, if you're in a situation that's not stable, if you don't feel like you have people you can turn to, I assume for lots of us, it would be very hard to keep going. Even if we think we should, that it would be hard. Was it hard for you to keep going, and how did you keep going?
Yeah, there were definitely moments of my journey where it was really hard to keep pushing through. But I think it was the staff a part of Voices for Children, my CASA. I actually had some really great social workers. I've always been a space where I utilize my voice to really just uplift what I'm feeling and how I feel about others and situations. So being able to actually utilize my voice and talk to people about the things that I was feeling, I was actually, it felt a little bit better for me. So being able to talk to those people, I was able to get through those things. And you know, in foster care, there's not many people that stick around, but I was humbly blessed with the opportunity for people that really stepped by me and mentored me and picked me up through those times of weakness.
I'm glad to hear that. And I bet you, even knowing you just for a few minutes, something tells me you've said that to them, and I bet you they have appreciated it, and it has done something good for them to know that you appreciated them and that they were an important part of you walking your journey. Swamirs, I'm humbled by the fact that you were joining us from a hospital, but I think it must say something special about not only who you are, but probably in the end, how you think about the needs of other foster children. And so thank you for joining us and for putting in the effort to make that happen.
Absolutely. Despite my background, I'm actually in Seattle, Washington, in a hospital out here. It does. I think I've been here for about 3 weeks now, and I've been checking in with Voices about how special they are to me and how I really wanted to be here and share who I am, what I've been through, because it's needed. We really needed to lift this voice, and I could not let them not have me today. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
Not at all. Swamirs, we're happy to have you. Again, I know it could be a longer story, but given our short amount of time today, I would love the short version of how you ended up in foster care. Where did you grow up and how did that happen?
I was the exception to the rule by any sense of the word. I was actually born in Honduras, and at the age of 16, I was a victim of human trafficking. That's how I ended up in San Diego, California. I was taken in by police and put into the foster care system. The foster care system is not designed to care for an immigrant or somebody who doesn't speak English or somebody who have experienced that level of trauma. And of course, I think my first foster parent, my first foster dad, for example, just to give an example how not prepared he was to care for me. As soon as he found out that I was an immigrant and I had no documents, he took me down to the border with Mexico and took me over to immigration and said, deport him. It wasn't, the foster care system wasn't designed, and it is still not designed to protect somebody like me and somebody who has experienced that much trauma. Obviously, I wasn't deported. I let them know who he was, and I was in a system, and my social worker came and picked me up and took me back into a group home. It wasn't easy. 16, I was in multiple group home, foster home, shelters, everything. To make me a good driver because I got to know the city. So, yeah.
Wow. And Swamirs, tell us where in Honduras were you born and what was life like for you there? And again, I realize these are big open-ended questions I'm asking you, even though I'm asking you to share it with us in a crisp way. But where did you grow up in Honduras, and what was like there, and how did you end up being trafficked?
Yeah, I was again, my goodness, I was born into a culture that I wasn't really, I consider myself Latino for all purposes, but really not. My mother is Turkish, my father is Saudi Arabian, my mother is Christian, and my father is Muslim. So when they got married, it was a sin. So they ended up in Honduras as refugees. I was born there in 1990. You know, having two cultures clash really created a lot of challenges in the household. So my father was very violent, and it created a lot of very, you know, I mean, I have 57 scars on my body that today I can tell a story about them. You know, the last one he did, he tried to cut my eye out when I was 9 years old. And that's actually the last time I saw him, because he left. I was the oldest one in my family, and that was in my culture. I had to become the man type of thing. So I started working, and actually working on the streets is how I ended up encountering my first sexual assault at the age of 12. And at the fort, and then you know, continue working, doing the best I could. And I was working at a Pizza Hut in Honduras at a restaurant, and that's how I met my traffickers. They left, they ate, they left, and it was time for me to go home. And next thing I know is that they started talking to me out of nowhere, a wet tissue over my mouth and nose, and I was gone. I wake up in San Diego, and for 6 months I was there's many names for it: human trafficking, child sex trafficking, commercial sexual exploitation of children. There's a lot there. I don't think I really came to terms to what really happened to me until really late in my life, maybe until like I was 20, to really fully absorb that. But also there was also another exception to the rule. You know, people think that what happened to me only happens to women or to girls, but it happened to me as a man. And it was challenging for me to accept that. It challenged every part of me. And then placed in the foster care system, it was just added that, you know, the opportunity for me to be challenged in every aspect of life.
So, Mears, I'm taken by the fact that even at 20, you were able to absorb it, because, you know, most of us don't end up with a fraction of the trauma that you've made it through. And I would say most of us struggle to even adapt to, you know, a lesser portion of trauma than what you managed to absorb at 20 or at 25 or whatever. What do you think ended up allowing you to deal with it, absorb it? I know it's never gone, so I know you're not saying that, but what allowed you to at least begin to move forward and to make some sense of it, if that's what you would describe it as?
Yeah, you know, I think making sense of it was really when I became part of a community of people who have experienced similar things like me, in that, you know, I was able to, that I shared something with them, and that they knew what I have been through, and, you know, the power and control that happens when you're in that situation. But I think it was what really made a huge impact on me was when I became part of something larger than me, that I became an advocate. I met my CASA, and my CASA told me about this group of young people who were talking, and honestly, and like he talked, you know, he told me about it, and I spoke very broken English, and I really wanted to do that, but I couldn't. So I came into the panel, and it allowed me to share my story in a way that I couldn't have, and it gave me a voice. I always have said this. It gave me a voice. It gave me a purpose. It gave me a way to say my story in a way that is mine, that own me, that I owned it, not that somebody owned me. And that was in 2018. You know, so it took a couple of years to get to the point of like, I observed this. I know what happened to me. I know it's going to affect me forever, but it doesn't have to change me. What happened to me doesn't have to change me. And that was the moment that I realized that, you know, that what happened to me doesn't dictate my life. It didn't write my future. I mean, by statistic, all of us should be in jail. All of us should have been homeless. All of us should have experienced severe things in our life. Yet we're all thriving because of the amazing support we have received.
Joseph, let me bring you back into the conversation. As you hear Swamir's and Christine and Candace, does any of what they've shared resonate with you, or is your story in many ways very different than theirs?
In a lot of ways, we have similar stories. I think my story was a little more contained. Swamir's has definitely a very unique story. I was more so just not in a stable environment with my family. at the time. And then it just I kind of stayed in the system. I was never, my parents never did what they had to do to put me back in their custody, and I kind of just aged out of the system that way.
And what was it like for you as you were going through the system? Because again, as you're describing, you were in the system for a fairly long time. By the time you were 10, 11, had you just come to the conclusion that you were going to be in the system till you were 18? Were you still hoping that there was going to be a change? Give me a sense of those. It sounds like 13 years almost that you were in the system from 5 to 18.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, 19 years old, I think, was when I actually emancipated. And I held out hope for, my mother. She would, I had contact with her, and she would tell me, we're going to get things together, and we're going to, we're going to reunite, and everything's going to be okay. And so I kind of, held on to that for that amount of time and never let go of it. I think when I was 17, I kind of came to terms that I was probably going to emancipate out of the foster care system.
And what would be, when I speak with you now, I appreciate that you present with a level of strength and clarity, but I assume that you had to do some work to get to where you are today. Am I right? And if so, what are the things that have allowed you to be a father, to be employed in the way you are, to be walking around in the world in the way that I'm assuming you do?
Absolutely. It definitely was not easy. I definitely faced some obstacles getting to where I am now. As you said, around the age of 18, I got myself into some trouble, and that, definitely affected the way I would proceed into the future. Resilience is the only word I can come up with, just work. I worked really hard for the things I want. Right now I'm a production supervisor for a computer company in Poway, California. Computers are something that I've always held on to. Even when I was in foster care, I was always, reverse engineering something or taking something apart. That was a hobby for me. So I just staying hard at work at something. That's really.
And how did your CASA come in your life? And do you remember the first time you heard that you were going to get a CASA?
Absolutely. Kevin, his name's Kevin, and he's probably watching right now. I hope he is. Yeah, he's wonderful. I stay in contact with him till this day. I heard about Voices for Children through Sabrina. Sabrina is one of the moderators at Voices. She snagged me up when I was 15 years old. Wanted me to speak on the real word. Kevin, I met him when I was about 12. He's been there. I saw him about every Wednesday. He came to my foster home. He would come see me at school. We did things together. He got me into music. A lot of the passions that I have for things that I have now were planted by Kevin. So he's definitely a driving force in a lot of the things I do now.
And Christine, let me bring you in and maybe ask a similar question. Who is and was your CASA, and how did you meet her?
Yeah, well, it's very vague the way that we met. My CASA was Christine. Christine and Christine, you were a perfect match from the beginning. I was her first CASA case. I was the first for her, and I might have been the only. I just remember another person coming in to visit me and recognizing that she sat there and she said, I understand how you feel, and I know you're probably tired of meeting people, but I do want you to know that I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be here until I can't anymore. And I think once I heard that from her, and no matter how upset I was, or no matter how much attitude I had when she would call or come and visit, she still came and she still called and she was still there. So I quickly had to remove my attitude and adjust and learn how to disagree appropriately. And she was there, and I don't remember not one step of the way that she wasn't, not one court date, not one school removal and moving to another, not one change from group home to another. She was there, and if she wasn't the one helping me pack my bags and taking me there, she was the one greeting me at the door of my new placement or my new school on the first day.
Do you think, Christina, that you would have done well with any really good CASA, or do you think that there was something distinctive about your relationship with Christine that people can learn from? And part of me is asking this in part on behalf of Voices for Children, trying to learn what they should know from someone who went through it and who had a positive experience. You know, do you have a sense of why it worked for you and Christine?
I think it was because it was authentic. It was transparent. She didn't come in as a person with a savior complex. She came in with someone that was humble and had empathy for my situation. She knew she hadn't ever stepped foot in the situation or walked a day in my shoes, but she knew that she was there to help me get over any hurdles. And she was there. I think that's a lot of times we mistake mentors, or we mistake people in our lives, or they mistake themselves as who they're supposed to be, a part of our life. But I think if you come in transparent and you come in authentic and you come in knowing that you don't know all the answers and you won't be able to provide all the answers, but know that you'll work through those puzzle pieces together, I think that's what it is, and that's why we hit it off. I had so many people coming in, so many people that said, trust me, I'm gonna do this and we'll be here, and you know, they were there for that moment and then they weren't there anymore. And from the time that we met to the duration of my time in foster care, she was there, up until the day that I drove myself to court to emancipate, and she was still waiting for me there in the courtroom.
Did you guys have an interest or a hobby or a favorite TV show or what have you in common, or were you guys different interests but still a good connection?
We definitely had different interests, but I think the connection is that we were both so open to learning from one another, that we were able to share those and experience those differences, and it made me the more well-rounded person that I am today. I don't think I would have listened to like rock music, or you know, if I don't think I would have ate sushi or any seaweed. I remember us going to the beach and having seaweed like for the first time. Like I don't think I would have had any of those experiences if it wasn't for her.
Nice. Candace, tell me a little bit about your experience with your CASA, and did you have a different CASA than your brothers, or were you the only one who had a CASA among the five of you?
My family actually were the case of the day during one of their sessions with new CASAs that are in training. And they asked for 2 CASAs because we had 5 of us, and one of my brothers was on a different case in the 4 of us. And so I just remember them. Oh, Sabrina tells a story, and so does my CASA Genevieve, who's on here. I just saw her name pop up. And I just remember them saying, oh, there's a family of 5. There's 1 girl and 4 boys. And she was like, well, I'm one of 5 kids, and I'm the only girl in my family. So I felt like she already had felt a connection with us. And so because of that, we did end up getting 2 CASAs on our case, but Genevieve was mine and 3 of my brothers. And without her, I don't think I would have my relationship with my brothers today, because we were separated throughout the county of San Diego. We didn't have anyone to bring us together. That wasn't a priority for the group homes or for the foster parents until Genevieve went to court and was like, this needs to be a priority for everyone involved. So once a week, she was able to get visitations with us all together. And then once a month or so, she would come and pick us up and take us to go do things together. And she would drive all over the county of San Diego just to make sure that we all got to see one another. Until this day, she still busts missions and has been just a really stable human being in my life and in my siblings' lives. And a lot of the pictures that she has taken over the years, even though we have decided that it wasn't during the time we wouldn't smile all the time because you're like, oh my gosh, pictures again. But now we look back on them and it's like, I wouldn't have any pictures of me as an 11-year-old girl ice skating for my birthday without her. So it's still really emotional because she's been such a huge impact in my life, and someone I've admired dearly and looked up to. And I'm grateful that she's still continuing to be a CASA today, even though my brothers and I have all aged out, and she's working with more kids. So more kids get the grace of Genevieve and get their pictures taken so that when they're older and maybe she's not or she is in their lives, she is always going to have an imprint on somebody.
Well, why do you think she did it? And maybe you've asked her this, and maybe you've had the conversation, Candace, so maybe you already know. Why do you think she did it? And why do you think she sustained? Because if you're anything like me, there are probably things that you've started before, and even though they were good things and in your mind you knew you should have seen them all the way through, maybe you didn't. And maybe you're better than me and maybe you haven't been like that before, but I know certainly in my life there are things that in retrospect I wish I had seen through and I hadn't. So why do you think Genevieve did it, and why did she stick with it? Because as wonderful as you are, I'm sure it was not easy being who you needed her to be and who it sounds like she ultimately was for you.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I guess when I asked her why she became a CASA, it was that she saw a commercial on TV and just thought she had the time to do it. And she was like, well, I could change a kid's life, like it's not a big deal. But she didn't see it as a job. She didn't see it as something that, like, I'm going to change this kid's life. She just thought of, okay, well, if I could be there for this kid, then let's see what this is about. So going through the trainings, and the day before the day before she was going to go on her Australia trip, she got approved to be our CASA and was able to get the permission to come see us. And we didn't know who she was. We didn't know what she wanted with us. And we, like Christine said, it's just, you see, like, there's somebody else coming into your life and who knows how long they'll be there for. And I think because I was able to push the buttons with her and kind of push her away a lot of the time, but knowing that she constantly called. So there was days where she upset me on one of our trips or upset one of my brothers. The next day she would call me like, hey, how's it going? As if nothing ever happened. And then you would discuss it eventually when you're in the car. I think a lot of my, I guess, failures that I've had in the last 18 years or however long, I don't even know how old I am anymore, but like last 10 years, I was, even though like I was very disappointed in myself and didn't want to share those failures with anybody, eventually when I did, she was the first person I went to and I told about it. And instead of being like, oh, I'm so disappointed in you, she always came up with a plan to how we can fix this. How can we better you? Like, what would be the best interest for you, I guess, or what would help you get to where you want to be? It never became, okay, well, we need to get you back into school. It's like, what do you want to do if you're not in school? Like, if failing out wasn't the most ideal situation because you didn't have the guidance or didn't know how to handle it, where can I go where can I help you at? Where can I go? And I think just having her consistency, just always being there whenever we needed it, never changing her phone number so that if we didn't have a phone at the time, or we could memorize it, and for the last 18 years, she's had the same phone number. And luckily we were able to call it and know that she'll always answer, even if maybe her voicemail picks it up.
I love hearing that. And even that, as you're saying, has such a sweetness and a power to it. And I am glad that she's listening and she's getting to hear that. Again, I'm sure each of you have said your thank yous in a million different ways, but I'm sure it's not only good for each of the CASAs, but I'm sure it's good for other young kids who are now getting to benefit from their love and grace. And so I'm glad that you're sharing that again. Swamirs, tell me a little bit about your CASA. Who is he, and what ended up being special about your relationship, and why? Again, was it just luck and happenstance, or was there something designed about why you guys hit it off?
I honestly credit that to like the matching people at CASA, at Voices for Children. I believe they have a team of people who matches youth depending on their interests or something like that. Or maybe I'm making that up and just giving praises to Voices for really making a really good connection. Marco came into my life 2 days before my 18th birthday. It's a funny story. I'm going to take a minute and tell it you all. I met my casa today on a Friday of June 20th, 2018. It was 2 days before my 18th birthday. The staff were in my room telling me, like, hey, you have $50. You can buy whatever you want for your birthday. I know all I wanted to do is see my mother. So we're having that back and forth. And at the moment, the staff member comes and tells me, your casa is here. I'm a Spanish speaker. Like the first thing came out, like, my home is back in Honduras. And we had a joke for a moment. And then they told me what a casa was. And the first moment I was like, okay, well, it's really whatever. I just need to get these people off my back. I came out and this guy was in like a 3-piece suit on a hot day, really like, I don't know, it was like right after work. So it was a very interesting moment. And at first I thought this guy is cocky, he's old and just weird. And I just didn't connect, right? I didn't feel that. And then all of a sudden we just started talking and, I asked him what he liked and stuff like that. And he said music. And I was like, okay, that was a click for me in that moment. I love music. And that was what really kept me going. And I had CDs, and that was my respite for myself, right? Music. So I asked him what type of music you like, and he's like salsa, merengue, bachata, reggaeton. I was like, whoa, like hold on, how old are you? I was like, you can't like that type of music, you're old. The reality is, like, he was only like 33 years old when I met him, and that was it. That was the moment until we clicked, right? And then he kept coming back. He actually came back on my 18th birthday, and he took me to my first sit-down restaurant. He taught me how to use a fork, a knife, and a spoon, and all those things that I did not know how to do. And to share that moment with somebody that, is a complete stranger, somebody like out of nowhere, and that takes that time and tells you how to use a fork and a spoon. In a group home, they give you a spork. That's it. Like, you just kind of like figure it out as you go, type of thing. To have somebody who just take that time. He was the first for everything. He took me to my first baseball game, and he did all these crazy, amazing things with me. He took me to the beach. Taking me to the beach was he had to go to court. We had to petition the court, and we had to go through all these things because it was a dangerous thing. He was that moment. But I think what really made us connect is the additional connection is that this man was a fighter. He came into my case in June, and within weeks, he was calling everybody about my case, my immigration attorney, my lawyer, my everything. Why Samir has been in foster care for 2 years and nothing has been fixed. I turned 18 years old, and I still had no legal residency in the United States. By September 30th, 2018, I was getting my green card in the mail, was getting my Social Security in my mail, just because these men took that time and pushed people and called people for the first time in foster care. Somebody had that time to really spend some time and say, like, I noticed you. I noticed you have holding you close. I'm gonna petition the court for more money. I've been in foster care and I have been only given one clothing allowance. Those type of things is that what really somebody who notices you and goes above and beyond just to care for an immigrant kid who has really no place in foster care. And that was a special. That was something that I will never forget. That he helped me get my GED. He helped me get into a transitional housing program. And I tried to foster care a little late. They gave me an extension because there was a lot of things that still need to happen with me. And this man fixed everything. I was ready to HR foster care within 6 months because of Marco, because of my casa.
I love hearing that. And again, I hope Marco is watching today as well. Joseph, let me bring you back in. Tell me, for all of the good things that happen with CASAs, I'm sure there have been times when maybe things didn't go well. Tell me about one of those that didn't go well, and how did you and your CASA get past that?
Wow, really having to think about that. I say the only times that things really didn't go over too well with Kevin and I were when he was getting those calls along with my foster mother from La Presa Middle School, Parkway Middle School, even maybe a little bit in Grossmont High School. Those calls, showing my not so good side. Those are probably the only times we didn't get along.
Oh, interesting. Go back and Joseph, you think a little bit about the foster care system. If you were in a position to make changes, what are 2 or 3 things that you think would make the foster care system better? What would you love to see changed for other young children who are going through it right now?
One thing that I think would help, so financial literacy. I know that that's like kind of a very specific thing to point out, but growing up, I never really had a sense of money or how it would affect me as an adult or things like that. That's something that I think is very important. Even outside of foster care system, I think that financial literacy is important. People aren't necessarily learning how to budget money correctly, learning how to make investments, learning how to save for retirement, things like that. That's definitely. Yeah, that's really the only one thing I can think of off the top of my head.
I'll take that. Christine, what about you? If you were trying to help improve the foster care system, what would you love to see done? What do you think would put our children in a better place?
For me, I would, because of who I am, I think it would have to do a lot about like cultural relevancy. And knowing where you come from. I'm a strong believer in you have to know where you came from in order to know where you're going. If not, you're lost. So I remember a lot of times I was placed in group homes with different people of different religions, different nationalities, different cultural backgrounds, and they couldn't express themselves in that way. It was your traditional American Christmas or Thanksgiving, but what if Christmas and Thanksgiving, where I come from, that's not what it looks like. And there wasn't a way for people to be inclusive and diverse in that way. So that's what I would say. I would say to diversify the cultural relevancy and make it a little bit more inclusive for all those that are a part of the foster care system.
So say more about that, Christine. How much did race show up positively, negatively, otherwise in your experience?
It showed up in all ways. There was definitely racial injustices. You were definitely placed with people that, if you are a 5-year-old little, Black girl, an African American girl, or a Mexican girl, Latinx child, you are placed with people that don't know how to do your hair, that don't even know the first thing, and that's just one basic thing, so you're walking around looking kind of crazy because you don't have somebody that knows how to maintain your hair. The same thing about food. If I'm accustomed to eating soul food, or if I'm accustomed to eating, Latinx food from my heritage, and that's not what you're providing, you're not even asking, you're not asking for my feedback or my input. And in the foster care, it should truly be nothing about us without us. And they should make sure that those voices are incorporated when they are making those decisions. And when they are placing children, and making sure that people that they are placing children with are they have cultural knowledge of this child and the background and what might be needed to make sure that they're set up for success.
Swamirs, what would you say if you were thinking about improvements, changes to the foster care system, trying to get us all to a better, stronger, healthier place? What are a couple of the things you'd love to see considered and or changed?
I would like to echo what Christine shared, I think, as far as housing and how, placement of and housing and group homes and shelters, all that is done without necessarily our just taking into consideration who we are as a human, who we are as a person, who we are as a culture, who we are as my age, who we are as what I eat, how I speak, how I do things, and it's challenging to be in places where you feel left out, I remember being placed in a group home where, on a foster home, for example, that they went to Disneyland and they left me locked in the house because they just didn't want to take a kid who didn't look like them. And the first foster parent taking me down to the border and telling him to immigration I should be deported. I think that those are, my experience is a little different just because I had an extra layer of challenge that I was an immigrant. But then, I think that, being moved around and being placed in group homes where, the level of care is so horrible and terrible, and yet, those places are still around sometimes in a way, and it challenges who we are. It challenges us, like, are we worth it? Are we enough to give that, right? I think that the foster care system can use an overhaul when it comes to what it means for the children. I think there's this hyper focus on the trauma and they often forget who we are, that the trauma is just a part of who we are, and it does not define us, right? I think within the first day of being in foster care, I was placed on medication. Medication is like a thing, right? Like I think I don't want to speak for my well-dressed other colleagues here in the camera today, but like there was some point that I was taken into a group home where for 3 months I was in 13 type of psychotropic medications. I do not remember what happened. I could easily have been assaulted, abused, or whatever in those 3 months, and I do not remember. Over medication in foster care is a huge issue, and it's not done for the well-being of the children, because I was diagnosed so many different times. I was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder because every time they spoke to me in English, I would reply to them in Spanish, no te entiendo. I do not understand you. So you see, like when we talk about racial injustices, we talk about the injustices that we go through. Those are the injustices that, slapping a label on me means that they told me I was oppositional. I became oppositional. They told me I have reactive attachment disorder. I became just hated everybody, right? So it was those things, those labels they're put on us, and it takes years to take those off, right? It wasn't until recently that I think that I've been able to take off some of those labels and let go, start my family, have my wife, have my kid, have a good job, have everything that I need. But the labels in foster care are just part of the racial injustice that unfortunately it is part of it. It is pretty much who they are, it's an unfortunate part. But I think that, sorry, I can go for too long, but there's so many areas that we can look at improvement.
Candace, let me bring you in and ask a similar question. If you were to think about important, valuable changes that you'd want to see, are there things that stand out to you that you wish were either changed or at least discussed and debated in the foster care system?
I think it'd be keeping siblings together. I feel like that you need your support system, and you need someone that knows what you're going through. Yeah, you're in a group home with other kids that may be in similar situations, but nothing keeps you more connected than your siblings. Nothing keeps you more connected to who you are and who you want to be if you don't see your siblings. Like, for instance, I was by myself in a foster home, and I begged my foster parents to bring in my youngest brother, I would beg them. And the fact that I had a CASA that was willing to drive all over the place to keep us kind of in any type of relationship with one another, I feel like there should have been more done. I feel like that even though, yes, we were a little bit older, different age groups, when they were talking about how younger kids will get put in foster homes, or younger kids will get picked up to be adopted before an older child does, because they think that they're too far gone. There's no way of supporting them, helping them through what they're going through. They're just going to be rebellious and things like that. So I feel like having more focus on keeping those siblings together, so that there isn't as much of a strain when they decide if they want to be family when they're older. I feel like that has a lot to do with who I am now, is being able to say, okay, I do have a family and I want to create a family. And yes, I don't want to be like my parents, but I want my brothers to be in my life. I want them to watch my daughter grow up. I want all these things, but I feel like there wasn't a lot of focus on trying to keep siblings together when I was in care. And I feel like that's still something that is discussed today. And I know that there's only so many CASAs that you can get to volunteer with the program. And I know they're doing their best to try to keep family together and keeping siblings together. But I feel like the system itself needs to be improved in a way that allows that to be a priority. And that's not even something that they have to think about.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes very intuitive sense as I hear you say that. Swamirs, I know that you have a doctor appointment and that you'll have to leave us. So I want to thank you for joining us. And
I'm actually
wish
coming
you the best.
back. I'm just taking 5 minutes. I just need to do a quick thing, and I'll be back in 5 minutes.
That sounds good. That sounds very good. Joseph, help us as we come to conclusion here with a few thoughts. What would you say to those who are considering becoming a CASA? I think like maybe Christine shared, or maybe Candace shared it with their CASA, seeing a TV commercial. What would you say to someone who's thinking about it, not really sure? And I mean in a real sense, give them a little advice, a little color, a little insight. What would you say to them?
Sure. So, I mean, piggybacking off what Candace said, a lot of us don't have that consistency or a foundation every week, or a foundation period. Seeing someone every week, that consistency, that knowing that someone's going to be there, and just not even to have an answer, maybe just listen. You can make that difference in someone's life. You know, you can be that catalyst for someone to, you know, change their future and put them on a better trajectory for a better path. I think that everyone, if you're considering being a CASA, absolutely do it. You might find someone that you love just more than yourself. It's beautiful.
You know, that notion of going beyond yourself, of advocating either for other people or sometimes for yourself, I think is a powerful one, and is one that I feel like I hear again and again. And it certainly sounded like it was part of Candace's story in terms of advocating for her siblings. That part of that, I'm sure, gave her additional strength. Christine, what would you say to someone who's thinking about becoming a CASA, not sure, intrigued by it, but still not sure it's right for them? What advice, what feedback would you give them?
Sure. I'd say to come in being present, come in with the intent to build bridges, come in with an intent to experience something that you will not ever experience before. Come in to know that you may not necessarily think that you are changing this child's life, but just knowing that you are going to be a consistent presence that is going to uplift them, that is going to empower them, that is there just for them. Know that you are that, and that makes all the difference. When we are growing up, it makes all the difference in adulthood to know that you had that, just that one person that was for you. That was for you, will be about you, and, you know, will consistently create a relationship that adds that for you to see what actual healthy relationships look like when you're outside in the real world.
You know, Christine, Maya Angelou, the late poet and author, used to have that wonderful saying that every child should have at least one room that they walk into, that when they do, some adults' eyes light up. And I think that's true of human beings in general, but I think particularly for children, and as we're forming and growing and trying to make our way into this world, that's such a powerful thing to have that and have it on a consistent basis. I also appreciate what you said about the savior complex and not bringing that to that, but bringing an opportunity to be open and to learn and to grow. I think there's power in that. Candace, what would you say to people who are thinking about it? Because it is a big commitment, and people may want to do it, but not be sure about whether they can be valuable and whether they can rise to the occasion. What would you say to people who are on the fence and trying to decide whether or not to be a CASA?
I feel like the team that matches you to a CASA or a child to a CASA, they're finding the perfect matches, or at least the best fit matches. And I know that they're doing their background check, or they're doing what interests you as a person and trying to match you with a kid that might have similar interests, or that you're able to influence in a positive manner. Like, I feel like if you're going to be somebody that's going to come into a child's life that is going through trauma, don't judge them by their case file, because what is being written in there doesn't always matter, and it doesn't always give you the full story of that kid. A lot of the people that are writing these case files don't ever get the chance to build that relationship with the kids, because they have so many other case files as well that they're trying to take care of. So I feel like when you go in, you're going in and meeting a child, like you're just meeting a person. Be as open as you want them to be with you, understanding that it's not going to be as easy, because there are walls that have been built because there has been some betrayal, some trust issues that have been made because of that child's life. Just knowing that you can make an impact on the kid, even though you might not directly see it. There are so many people that come into our lives that we may not know that make that imprint or make that difference until you're a little bit older, and you're like, wow, I really liked that person because of what they said. You know, like, I really appreciated them caring for me the way that they did, and maybe our relationship was just then, and it's not in the future, but you know that you made an impact. Because I feel like we go day by day thinking of all the things that we could have and what we didn't have, but knowing that somebody came into my life that didn't have to and spoke up on my behalf and went to court and said, this is what this kid needs, or went to my school and said, hey, she might need some extra help. She might not like it, but at least she's going to feel more confident in her abilities versus being torn down because a teacher doesn't think that she's good enough.
Candace, I want to finish up by asking each of you to indulge me and do a little rapid response round. And so I want to ask you 3 or 4 questions, and I want your immediate reaction, whatever comes to the top of your mind, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. What's your favorite song?
Oh, Hero by Mariah Carey.
Like that, if you could get 2 tickets to visit anywhere in the world, where would you love to go?
Australia.
Oh, interesting. Who's a hero of yours, or the hero?
Genevieve.
Love that. And your favorite book?
What is it called? The Language of Flowers.
Oh, I don't know this one, but I like the title. Who's that by? Do you know?
I don't remember, but it's about a foster kid who moves into this house and learns about the language of flowers through her foster parent. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. Beautiful book.
I love it. I love it. Christine, are you ready for a little rapid response as well?
Sure.
If you got to rename yourself and you got to choose a name for yourself, what would be your new name?
Ooh, Queen.
Love that. If you could have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would you love to meet and have dinner with?
I did get to meet her, didn't get to have dinner, but Maya Angelou.
Oh, I love that. What is your favorite meal in the world? If someone was going to try and thrill you and put together a beautiful meal for you, what would they do?
Palau and callaloo.
Callaloo. Interesting. Okay. Last but not least, your favorite TV show.
Oh, This Is Us.
Interesting. And now you're pushing yourself into overtime. Who's your favorite character in This Is Us?
All of them. They all come from so much all of them.
Okay. Really good. Joseph, are you ready for your rapid response?
Here we go.
Okay. Joseph, again, if you in this entire world could meet one person, who would you love to meet?
Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix. Interesting. Do you play the guitar as well? Do you sing? Do you play the guitar?
I am a guitar player. Yes, sir.
I love that. Okay, so that leads to the next question. What is your karaoke song?
Oh, you're going to laugh at this. In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins.
You are marking yourself as an old soul. I love that. Phil's having trouble these days, but at least he's still got one fan, which I absolutely love. If I told you that you could star in any movie, what movie would you want to star in?
Oh, man, Django Unchained.
Interesting. Which character would you be in Django Unchained?
I think I would play Mr. Jamie Foxx.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Last question.
Yes, sir.
What, if anything, scares you?
Oh, being alone. That's a scary one. Especially having a 3-year-old son now. I would hate to be without him.
Love that. And what is his name? What is the little fella's name?
Elijah Soul Hill.
I like that. I like good names. Elijah's a good name. That's there's a lot that's good there. And Swamirs, did you join us again, or were you able to come back?
I'm here. Yes. They just needed to give me something on time at 6 p.m. So thank you for the grace.
Okay. Not at all. Swamirs, the last question of the whole conversation goes to you. We're doing rapid response, and I want to put a few questions in front of you, and would love to get your reaction. If I told you either had to go bald or get a blonde mohawk, which one would you do?
Bald, anytime. I already done my COVID hair.
I love that you've already done that. If I told you could either be, because I know you love music, you could either be a terrific professional singer and musician, or You could be star quarterback for a Super Bowl winning team. Which one would you choose?
I would be a musician.
You definitely be musician. Which musician? Who would you be? Who would you?
You know, I was thinking of this as you were asking Candace her favorite song. My 1-year-old is obsessed with Fever by Peggy Lee. So like, I would definitely go back in that era and be like a singer of that time. I'm like researching more music. He's an old soul. He loves Frank Sinatra, Peggy Lee, and like that song is just his life right now. It's fascinating.
If you were not a human being and you had to be some other kind of animal, what kind of animal would you be?
Tiger.
Tiger. What color tiger would you be? There are all kinds of different colored tigers. What kind of tiger? What would you look like? The classic tiger? Would you be a white tiger? What would you be?
A white tiger. And there's a story behind that, but I will leave that for another time. A white tiger.
I love that. Final question. What's your color?
Blue.
Blue. Interesting. Why blue?
It was when the last time I saw my mother, I was wearing a blue shirt, and it stuck with me.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And your mother, what is her name?
Maricruz. My biological mother name is Maricruz.
Maricruz. That's a beautiful name. Swamir, Christine, Joseph, Candace, thank you all. I'm thanking each and every one of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to thank you guys so much. You guys were terrific and so very thoughtful, and I wish you all well. I wish you a wonderful holiday season and even better 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much, Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kelly, may I turn it over to you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carlos. And I too want to say thank you so much to Christine, Swamir, Joseph, and Candace. We really appreciate your willingness to share your time tonight and to share your story. And to CASAs, Kevin, Christine, Genevieve, and Marco, I hope you're listening. Thank you to each of you for all you did to impact the lives of these incredible young men and women who are with us tonight. Carlos, thanks so much. Really, really an amazing conversation. And for all of you who are watching and listening, we really appreciate your sharing your time. To learn more about Voices for Children, you can visit us at www.speakupnow.org. To become a CASA in San Diego or Riverside counties, you can find more information there on our website. But if you're joining us from other locations and you're interested in learning more about becoming a CASA, we encourage you to look up your CASA organization in the community in which you live. All of us need more CASAs to help support amazing children who will grow into becoming resilient, strong, independent young people like our panelists today. So thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy your evening. And again, we appreciate your sharing your time. Take good care.